Instances of gender baiting. Hey, it's Prince of Queens, and I was seriously already writing this gender baiting videos script before I saw this, and it was just like, BAM! The most pathetically hilarious example of the phenomenon of gender baiting that I've maybe ever seen, and it came a la Hillary Clinton's campaign. Let's take a look.
I'm Hillary Clinton, and I approve this message.
I'd look her right in that fat, ugly face of hers. She's a slob.
She ate like a pig.
A person who's flat-chested is very hard to be a 10.
Does she have a good body? No. Does she have a fat? Absolutely.
So you treat women with respect?
I can't say that either.
All right, good.
I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Even the most humorless feminist would have a hard time not laughing at that shit. It's just fucking funny. Like, seriously, does Hillary Clinton really think this is gonna work? That's the best she got. I'm kind of terrified for what a Trump presidency will actually be like, but not because some tween-aged girls will blink in slow motion while looking in the mirror or whatever. And what about all of the 13-year-old boys who also have to deal with appearance insecurities, but nobody ever talks about it, and also are simultaneously just discovering their sexuality in a climate of demonization of male urges? Fuck off, I cannot take this ad seriously. Anyhow, a black person on my Facebook friend list was complaining today about how people talk commonly about race baiting, but not so commonly about gender baiting. If you are unfamiliar with these terms, they are used to describe moments in which people, usually politicians and media, use identity politics to manipulate the masses. So I decided to make today's video about examples of gender baiting that have come up recently. But before I do so, I want to make it abundantly clear that these things go both ways. They do not just affect women and feminists, but men and anti-feminists alike. No matter who you are, you've probably been manipulated by pop culture's battle of the sexes or culture war over the past few years. While the initial baiting usually influences people to feel sorry for women, the backlash influences men too. I'll start with the two most obvious examples of gender baiting towards women. Number 1 in 5, 1 in 4, or 1 in 3 women will get raped or sexually assaulted on college campuses, according to rumor. This is an example of gender baiting that is so incredibly dishonest, yet prevalent that it is still on Hillary Clinton's campaign homepage. Oh, Hillary. Now, I'm not saying 100% for certain that this isn't the case, because the obvious caveat would be, what do you define as sexual assault? Which, remember, according to fourth wave feminists, is basically everything, including if a gay guy happens to touch a woman's thigh. Like, according to fourth wave feminists, trying to kiss somebody accidentally thinking that they were into it and they weren't, even if you apologize immediately after it and say you misinterpreted signals, you know, that thing that probably has happened to everybody and it is awkward but isn't sexually violating, but rather just emotionally embarrassing and tense. Well, that can be considered sexual assault. Still, the statistic is so provably erroneous that the people who gathered the information from the study has published in Time magazine that people shouldn't take it seriously. It's based on an anonymous survey that was sent over the internet, and only about 15% of the young women it was sent to actually responded. And like I said, the definitions of sexual assault were so vague that they included practically everything sexual that wasn't 100% fuck my pissy hard type of consent, including times in which there probably actually was consent, like having sex while intoxicated. One would think that people would bother not using this statistic, say, on the homepage of a presidential candidate's campaign, but, well, I guess they think gender baiting is so effective that it can be based on entirely false pretenses, and it still works to some degree. Number 2, the wage gap. Okay, people talk about this and they say it's a myth, but the wage gap does kind of exist, but it's a lot smaller than people think. Like, well less than a 10% difference between men and women, and nobody really knows entirely for certain whether it is because of discrimination or whether women on average might just not work higher paying jobs as well as men or whatever. I'm not saying one way or another, but it's not something that people can really quantify. It's really hard to track. But we do know that the 78-cent to the dollar number is completely false, and it is gender baiting to bring it up. Number 3, all of the talk about how women are supposedly treated ever so badly on the internet. Long story short, it is an entirely untrue and manufactured narrative spun by career feminists using their own anecdotal evidence as professional provocateurs to claim that somehow their lives are super hard because they get hate mail sometimes, when absolutely everybody does who writes blogs for a living, even people who don't pay the bills by constantly talking about how awful men are. Regardless, this tricks the average woman or girl into thinking that the times in which somebody was rude to them on the internet has to do with the fact that she was female, even though statistically males receive more abuse online than women by a decent amount according to Pew Research, and women receive about half of their abuse online from other women according to some people that said that. But even more than the numbers, I have also noticed that individual women will constantly use this narrative to try to get revenge on some random guy that they had a disagreement with online. I've seen many people I know do this to random dudes, forwarding his message of, his supposedly offensive posts out of context to their social media followers, or just blatantly lying about him and saying he threatened them or something. It happens all the time, and fourth wave feminism encourages this behavior. Number 4, anything having to do with abortion. I shouldn't need to explain this to you too much, but it should also be of note that this is also baiting to religious people, often religious women who get really upset about abortion. Number 5, mansplaining, manspreading, or any other word designed to shame men for trivial details having to do with their behavior. This is one that I think legitimately likely serves to further misogyny in the long run, because a dude can only be accused of mansplaining a few times before he gets seriously pissed off at women. And I cannot even imagine how misogynist the guys who got arrested for manspreading became after they got in trouble. Really poor strategy, feminists. Number 6, affirmative consent laws. This is the thing where they are saying that guys have to receive a yes from the women before every sexual action, and that if they don't actually receive a verbal yes, it could be considered rape or sexual assault. It's kind of insane, especially considering, how do they even know that he received a verbal yes? And then it, combined with the numerous college rape hoaxes, has prompted guys to be so paranoid about hooking up with women that they make them sign contracts or send them text messages with consent in them before one-night stands. This is another one that probably has mobilized men to be pissed at feminists and support Trump, because if I were straight, I would be scared about this too. Number 7. This one is almost entirely done by men like Milo Yiannopoulos or Trump, but also by women like Nicole Arbor, which is to say things that are very blatantly offensive about women, usually specific women or groups that are easy to make fun of, like fat women or specific feminists. It baits the women into getting angry, and then you get to see a bunch of angry feminists, which mostly ends up further solidifying the idea in the anti-feminists' brains that feminists are annoying. Which is what it really takes to bait men on a larger scale, because men are not so easily gender baited. I mean, feminists will scour the entire internet looking for things to be offended by. Meanwhile, they have been saying horrible things about men my entire life, and I don't really even feel like I had to say something about it in my memory until about a year ago or so. And I didn't even really start making videos until a few months ago. Okay, that's all for today. Stay tuned.